Run it. I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground, then I go off. Yeah, hit the ground, then I go off. Yeah, I can't take.
What up, everybody? This is the Bains and Beers podcast, and I'm here today with my co-host Ajay, and a very special guest today, voice of the Canucks, voice of Sportsnet. And
you gotta get that right.
Yeah,
I'm like TSN.
Don't mention that
the
name.
typical Surrey Brown boy that doesn't watch sports.
yeah. Mr. Randip Janda is here. Thank you very much for coming on today, and we appreciate your time a lot. What's
awesome
going
to be
on,
here, boys? I know you guys started this thing 3-4 years ago.
Yeah,
and you kind of popped up on my Instagram early days. So happy to be here. Love what you guys do. And
yeah, we have been following each other for a while.
Yeah,
I feel like we were trying. I think we honestly tried to get one together in the very first season.
No, I appreciate anybody that works in this space, especially Brown Boys, kind of making it happen, man.
Yeah.
This is a special time, so good for you guys to keep it going.
I appreciate that. It's a tough space, I feel like. You know?
There's a lot of podcasts out there, but it's the type of conversations you have, right?
100%.
You guys have a pretty chill conversation, and I personally love bringing in people from different backgrounds. You guys are doing a great job.
Man, and you're killing it too. Let's talk a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your early days and what you do. Let the audience know.
Yeah, so Randip Janda, Randip Janda is the English way to say it, but I know there's a lot of Apane that are listening too. So
Yeah,
born
they're
and
gonna
raised.
get salty if we don't say it properly.
No, I don't mind. I say it both ways. That's kind of what I love doing. But born and raised in Vancouver, and essentially what I do now is I do color commentary for the Canucks on radio. I do Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, every Saturday nights across the country, and Sportsnet 650 host as well. So over the last 5 years, so just a little bit of everything, man, and got my own business and a couple of things going on as well. So stay busy.
How'd you get into this space?
Well, my story is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I am not a broadcast school graduate. I didn't go to journalism school. I didn't do any of that. So I went to Killarney Secondary, graduated with mediocre grades. I'll be honest. Maybe honor roll the final grade 12 when you can pick your own classes. But outside of that, it was pretty C+ average. But went to SFU, got my degree in political science. Wanted to kind of get into the government side, maybe stuff like that. Just kind of figuring it out. Went to work in Ottawa for about 6 months, internship. And I was like, I can't do 8 years of this. I can't do a doctorate or a PhD or a master's degree. Yeah. So I came back and I was like, man, what do I do with this now? I've done all this stuff, all these years of studying, and I got like research skills. So I applied for Omni Television at that point, Rogers Media. They're like, all right, research job. Just do research, which I used to do anyways. Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'll apply for this and work 6 months, and then we'll figure it out. We'll see what life brings us, right? And then eventually started kind of actually like working the media side of things. Was writing sports on the side just as a passion. Yeah. And then fast forward a couple of years, and then just get opportunities in TV, get opportunity on eventually radio, and then you kind of figure it out. But it took a good 10 years, don't get me wrong. Like there was a lot of hard work. There's a lot of, you're trying it out, but it took a while to get there. So, but yeah, my road is not the normal one because people go to school for that. I kind of always had that passion of sports where I kept on the side and worked on it, right?
Yeah. Did you while you were growing up, did you have cousins around you kind of saying we see you as like a broadcaster? Because were you always a kid that knew his sports?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like even going back to my younger days, thousands of hockey cards. Yeah. You memorize the most random player and how many goals they had in 1994. Yeah. Right? So that passion for
the
sports.
Binders.
Oh, the binders. Yeah. I still got them at home, man. That's like a thing I just kind of keep back there just to remind you of the love of the sport, right? Started off being a huge sports fan, whether it was hockey, baseball, football, you name it, all of it. Video games like NHL 94 is still one of my favorites to this day.
NHL 10, was it? Fuck.
Yeah, see, that's the age difference right there. I say 94, you say 2010.
Yeah, man. I used to love those games.
Yeah. But that's, a lot of people, they'll say,
08 was a crazy one too.
I think 04 was, Madden 04 with the Mike Vick. I might be a little too young or too old for you guys on that one front.
No.
The Mike Vick one, that one to me was kind of like the GOAT Madden game. But video games have a big part of that too, right? It kind of grabs you and you get more interest into it. So always a hardcore sports fan.
Yeah. So then how was it? How did you get into from Omni and then transition towards like Sportsnet and everything else?
So
Because no journalism,
Yeah.
anything, nothing like that. Like, what happened?
a big part of that was actually the guy that hired me at Omni was his name's Bhupinder Dhundal. So
Shout out.
shout out. He used to be actually the host of Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi for a bit, and also like he runs global TV now. So this guy, low key to me, he's a really important person in our industry, in our community, mentor for me. But he hired me, and from the story I understand, there was a guy that had like a master's degree
Yeah.
in journalism, and then they had me who had no experience, and he opted for me based on the fact that, hey man, like this guy, he's willing to work hard, he's got the right attitude, and we can build on him, and we can make sure that he's wired the right way, is the way that I was told the story. So he brought me into the building and said, hey, this is what we expect of you, and just build. Don't worry, just be a sponge, absorb everything you can absorb. And when I started working at Omni, man, that's exactly what I did, right? A lot of great mentors along the way. But in 2014, 2015, Rogers bought the rights to the NHL broadcast rights. And that was a game changer for me because I was in the Omni building. I was already a hardcore sports junkie. Yeah. And when the opportunity came up, it was like, hey, we're going to do this in Punjabi.
How long ago was this?
This was 2014, 2015.
Okay.
So this was kind of, Bhupinder looking at me and saying, hey, do you want to... He didn't even ask. He's like, you're going to do this. I was like, I don't know, man. My Punjabi's not that good. I don't know if I can do it. Don't have that much TV experience. And no, he basically said, you're going to do it. Best decision I could have made because that got my foot into being on TV. That got me into covering sports. Started off on the Punjabi side, and then, a couple of years later, we had some really good success with the Benino call, and we went viral like globally, right? We were on
even just recently the Kadri one too.
Yeah, there was
that one,
absolutely,
that one was
right?
Pretty crazy too.
So, but like over time, you kind of put in the work, and then Sportsnet, that opportunity came up, and I was like, let's do it. So made the switch over to English too.
Yeah, because I feel like you said, it took you 10 years to get here, but I think the world's changing too now, right?
Totally.
Than it was like 10 years ago. And I think it's amazing to like talk about these stories because, I mean, coming from our community or up in our culture, like it's good to see that we can make it to that point. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I feel like, was that always, how hard is it for someone of color to make it to that point?
So I think when I started in the business, like
was it harder?
2010, I even remember going to like games and being like, oh, here's the guys from Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. And people wouldn't even care. Like straight up, like nobody would even, it would not be acknowledged. But now, fast forward 10, 12 years, and the game's changed completely. So I think there's an element of, it's kind of like the players back in the day, right?
Yeah.
One player comes through, a person of color, Punjabi guy, South Asian, you're kind of, you gotta fight for that space. You gotta make it succeed in the business. And it's a little difficult because, people in that space aren't your background. People don't understand where you're coming from.
And it's cutthroat, I feel like.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think with us, first few years, and Hadnarayan Singh is a great example too, where he kind of talks about that growing up in Alberta. But for me, I think, there was definitely some days where you're just like, man, where's this thing going?
Yeah.
Like, but over the years, I've done the English switch, and I'm doing both. Hadnarayan's done it. There's a few of my other colleagues that have done it as well. So the more you see it happen, you're like, all right, this place, it's in a good place now. But early on, it was difficult because you'd walk in and you're like, all right, I do this on a weekly basis, but you kind of picked up kind of
bad vibes.
You kind of pick up the outsider vibes.
Yeah,
we're like, I'm not being welcomed here like everybody else, right?
100%.
But that changed over time. That changed over time. No question.
But I feel like that's something we should also talk about because it's like not always the easiest, right?
Not at all, man.
Especially in those like spaces. I feel like it's cutthroat.
You kind of got to go through those things to get to where you want to go.
Well, and sports especially, right? Because sports is a space where I think it's getting better now. But back even a couple of years ago in some sports, it's one way for like 50 years. We're not talking about, it's been like this for a couple of years. We're talking about it's one way for generations, multiple generations. So, I take pride in the fact that in hockey at least, and in other places, I always kind of give a salute to people that did it before us, right? And I think in hockey, like Robin Bawa from the island, now he lives here in Vancouver. First NHL Punjabi guy to play in the NHL, which is, if you think about it now, that's ridiculous to do that in the 80s.
That's crazy.
This guy was playing.
Like that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
I was saying, like, do you feel it's like kind of the same for like the players in a way? That is it harder as a person of color, or is it just based on talent wise? Because if we think about it that way, in the 80s he did make it, but we're having the players that are kind of on the bubble type of thing, like, you know,
So on the outskirts kind
and
of.
then it just either it falls out or, you know, just something doesn't work out eventually.
I think we're moving in the right direction, but like if you go, so talking to, you know, a lot of people in Surrey as well, a lot of parents, a lot of friends of mine now have their own kids, right? They hit to a certain point where they're 5, 10, 15 years old, and they'll be like, they feel like there's politics at the grassroots level,
Yeah.
or like lower levels. But if you get to the higher levels now, and if I'm a GM, man, I don't care what background the person is. If they make your team better,
Yeah.
they should make the team. And I feel like professional sports, as far as players are concerned, is going that way.
Okay.
Now, the lower level, you remember, like some of these times, you know, sometimes parents coach the teams,
It's like volunteers.
Yeah.
right? Like, you know, so
Yeah.
there's always like, well, you can't speak across the board, but if you operate a business environment properly,
Yeah.
it shouldn't matter what the person's background. If they make your team better,
Yeah.
they should make the team. And we're starting to see that in hockey. But like, there's a guy up on a guy from New Zealand that plays for Bayern Munich in Europe, right?
Oh yeah. I heard
Right.
about
So
that.
Sarpreet Singh, like there are, you know, Arshdeep Bains is playing here in Abbotsford for the
Yeah.
Canucks. He's signed by the Canucks, right?
Yeah.
You go across the continent. I think that's being broken down a little bit. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's getting better where people are looking at it and saying, hey man, this is a business and it doesn't matter what the background is. Where if I have the best people in my organization, we're going to have success. So
Yeah.
who cares what the background is?
But then sometimes I feel at the same time, like certain, like in the NBA especially,
Yeah.
they
Oh,
try to
man.
exploit it
Yeah.
in a way, like
Yeah.
like the Satnam Singhs and all that.
But like, I
stuff
feel like
that.
Satnam Singh was just a bust. You know what I mean? Like they brought him over because of his height,
Yeah.
his size, but he didn't have agility. Like,
But
he
I'm
couldn't
saying,
move.
like, but is it because they do it for this? Because story and everything. First,
Oh yeah,
Indian guy to
oh
come
yeah.
in the
I could
NBA,
see that.
etc.
I see where you're going with this.
So,
Yeah.
okay, there's a
To
couple.
bring the India market.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things to do. Like you look at that, and Satnam, you know, I think with him was there's been other like bigs that get signed, and you just kind of see what they have.
Yeah.
I think with him, awesome dude. First of all, his rags to riches story, or you know, he's grinding to this
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
So
yeah.
he comes from very, very humble beginnings, right? So like on a personal level for him, it was great because it exposed him to a world and
Of, like opportunities.
But the question of was this done because of, you know, legit was he the best player out there or whatever? Like you could look at that. But like the fact is people sometimes make that decision. Organizations sometimes make that decision. I think if you're a player, if you're a broadcaster, if you're whatever, man, you gotta make use of that.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're there, like Satnam went there, and
Yeah, you have to be at some certain level to even be in
Yeah.
that position. I
In
feel
that-
like.
and with
So,
Satnam,
yeah,
like, dude,
you
I was
think
at an
of it that
event.
way too.
I was at an event in,
Yeah.
I think in Langley, actually. I was at the Langley Event Center, and he was there just hanging out. And the amount of brown kids that were just going up to him and being like, yo, I know who you are.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we will look at the player or a broadcaster or whatever and be like, man, where's this, you know, does he deserve to be here or does he not?
Yeah.
Next generation, I can guarantee you one thing, there's probably like 5 or 10 kids that are like, holy crap, this guy got drafted.
Yeah.
I got a shot.
Yeah.
I got a shot, right?
Even seeing you as a broadcaster, so many kids will hear the story and they're gonna be like, "Dude, we have a chance." Because
For sure, man.
at your age, how many kids in your time thought, "Oh, I can go be a broadcaster"? I'm sure not a lot were trying to chase that dream.
There's
Like,
the desire of one.
The desire,
Yeah.
but then it's like, realistically, am I gonna? You know what I mean?
Do you ever feel that people think that like you don't deserve that spot or something like that? Like I know you just said something like that. Like do you ever feel that for yourself ever?
I think, you know, when I was maybe younger in the business, I was like, all right, you're kind of like, okay, where do I stand in this thing? I haven't played at the NHL level. And then you start kind of looking into it, right? Now at this point, I'm completely comfortable with who I am. I've put in 10 years of hard work to get to this point.
Yeah.
I know, right? But I think when you're a younger broadcaster, when you're somebody that's younger in any profession,
Yeah.
you're doubting yourself to a certain
Yeah.
extent, right? You're just like, man, do I belong? And broadcast is like it's a volatile business.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a cutthroat business, right?
Yeah.
It's a dream job for a lot of
Oh,
people.
yeah.
So I think now I'm just no man. Like you know the game, you know what you do.
Yeah.
I know doing what I do in Hockey Night Punjabi, man, to go in and out of 2 languages, it ain't easy,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Like
that's
it ain't.
tough.
I've had a lot of friends be like, "Yo, I could do that." I'm like, "All right, Adi,
Try it.
come one weekend, let's go."
Yeah.
Right? But like, and it's not that easy, but it goes the other way too, right? Whereas like I know it's a learned, and you got to work on it. So as far as now, no, it's like no, you're, everything. But also my colleagues and people that work in the game, you work at that, man. Nobody falls into those opportunities.
No, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly. I agree too. As an analyst, though, so how is that? Like you just also mentioned something that made me think about when you said, like I didn't play in the NHL, right? And then I always think about like guys like Stephen A. Smith or Max Kellerman and stuff like that. So how is that difference compared to maybe if you're like chatting with a colleague who has been in it? Like I know that you have your experience now in the game. Like how was it when you were younger, and how did it change? Like to kind of. Did you kind of understand what I'm saying?
No, I totally understand
Yeah.
that, and I think now I get
understand what I'm
it.
saying?
Don't worry, I work in this game, so I know where
He
you're.
knows how to keep it going.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I think when I was younger, maybe like if I look at like if I had this job, and for instance, like I did the color commentary in the Punjabi side for 3 years before I became the host, right? So I did it on that side, and if I take it mentally now compared to back then, it's what you know, lean into that. Don't try to be something you aren't.
Okay.
I've never played in the NHL. Right? And I'm not going to be tapping into these stories of, when I was in the lock. No, that ain't me. Right? So what do I know? I know how to cover the game from a, probably more than other players, whether it's a statistical analysis of it, whether it's, hey, I see it from my worldview. I see it from the perspective that I see it. Lean into that. I think when you're younger in the game, you're trying to be like, all right, what do you...
Try to figure it out.
You're trying to look at other people and be like, hey, man, like, anybody, name a former player, whatever sport it is. Troy Aikman looks at, football this way. I got to look at it that way. No, the way you read the game is the way you read the game. That's what's brought you to a certain point. So my point, like with the Stephen A's, the guy's a classic example of super opinionated, what he does. But that guy, he found out who he was. And it's not exactly who he's off air, I'm sure. Right? There's always an on-air persona, there's an off-air. But just find out what you're good at and lean on that. Don't try to be Troy Aikman, man. Like we're not going to be we're not going to be that.
No, but I agree with that because a guy like Stephen A. Smith embraces his character, and he has that confidence where it's like he can say "fuck you, LeBron, you suck." You know what I mean? And like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah.
Do you ever receive that? Like, have you ever said something about a player where it's come back?
I was just about to ask the same thing. Like, have you ever pissed someone off? Like,
This is like
So like the color commentary job, you don't really deal with that.
Okay.
Right?
yeah, because you just
Yeah.
kind of.
Hockey Night Punjabi, they don't even know what I'm saying in Punjabi, so that's even better.
So you're
but
relevant shit, right?
as a talk show host,
Yeah.
so when I was hosting at 650, that's where your word travels.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, all right, I've never had a player or a coach or anything look at me like you said that last week. Your opinion. They've never said that. And I think it's important. There's a lot of people that don't make themselves available, right? Like if I say stuff, especially when I was hosting a show, I always tried to hit up maybe not practices because it didn't jive with my time, but I try to go to every single or as many games as I possibly could, and then I'd go to the media conference after. Or I'd go to the locker room after. I didn't necessarily have to do something there. I didn't have to talk to a player, but it's always good to be, hey, dude, I might have said something, and I'm here. Like if you got anything to say or whatever, like it never happened, but I think it's important to make yourself available because you are. It's an opinion. I get paid for my opinion. For sure. And for sure, man.
Yeah.
And I got an opinion and you may or not agree with it. If word travels back to you, like you should have the avenue of being like, hey dude, can we chat about
Let's
this?
talk it out.
Or at the very least I'm there, right? Because I think it's easy, especially in today's Twitter culture. Who knows? Who knows how long Twitter is going to be around anyways.
Elon Musk. He's going insane.
But it's important to, especially in our role, right?
But I mean, like that's how an Ariel Helwani like became who he is too, because dude, he used to have so many like fighters or Rampage coming after him. Dana White hates him, but like, dude, he has his own show, which does amazing. You know what I mean? So I feel like sometimes it's not a bad thing to have someone say like, "Yo, I don't want to," because it shines light on you too. Like it's not always bad publicity. You know,
and it works for a lot of people, I think. But I on my personal level, I think it's good to be for me.
Yeah.
just like, all right, every now and then you're gonna go there. I'm like, I was at practice earlier today, so to me, I've got more touch points.
That's pretty
now.
cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Just
hang out.
So what's going on at practice? What's going on with the boys?
Depends when you're coming out with this episode. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, man.
We'll probably be tanking for Bedard.
I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening.
You don't think so?
I don't think Vancouver will ever have a tank.
Yeah.
This market, man, nobody. I don't think this market will ever tank.
I mean,
like
I wouldn't
fans
mind,
might want to.
I wouldn't mind them on the team either. Yeah.
Yeah, but what are we looking at? If they're the worst team in the league, they got what? Like it's a lottery, right?
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that.
Our
too.
luck's not the best in those things.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, do you guys realistically see the Canucks winning a Stanley Cup? Like,
In my lifetime, or
yeah. Like, do you guys see
plan to
it?
live a while, so I hope so, man.
Like, why are they so bad?
I saw the Eagles win one Super Bowl.
From your
and I don't
perspective,
care.
why are they so bad?
Part of it is luck, right? You talk about lottery luck. The other thing is when you know you're mediocre for long enough, you never hit either. You don't become good enough where you're saying, all right, we got some special talents. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom in order to get premium generational talents.
Yeah.
Right? You might luck out. You might get a Quinn Hughes. You might get Elias Pettersson, but that makes you competitive. That doesn't make you an elite team. I think with Vancouver back in 2010, 2011, when I got started in the business, elite. Problem is, you can't keep that window the whole time. Sometimes you got to reset, right? Like NFL is a good example. There's more parity there, though. Like in a year to year, you can go from the worst in the division to the top of the division.
Yeah.
But first round picks in the NFL are they mean a lot, man. Even if you got the 15th pick, you could probably have the best player in the league. The best player in that draft.
100%.
Yeah.
NHL's
100%.
different, man. NHL's different. You're going to very rarely luck out on that. So I think it's, that you don't bottom out. You don't hit in the draft for a bunch of years. There's a bunch of things that the Canucks, they've stayed competitive enough, but that's a problem. If you're middle, the middle it's purgatory, man. You're not doing anything.
Because it's like at the end of the season last year, we're like a couple points out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then we're ready coming in this year. I even had this guy on the bandwagon. We're gonna make the playoffs.
I was like, yo, let's go Canucks. Like 2 games in, I'm like, bro, come on.
Legit. If you look at the team, though, the players that they have, like on a sheet of paper, they should be better than this. We can all be,
100%.
we can all look at the big scheme of things and why they have never won a cup or like that. But on this on this team, this year's edition, their defense is flawed. I've been saying that for a couple of years, but their forward group,
it's
good, man.
Yeah, okay.
Thatcher Demko's not supposed to be this bad. This year he's started off
Bro,
terrible. Right?
I'll tell you, it's my fault.
Oh.
I got a custom-made Demko jersey with the black skate, bro. And since then, and it was when we were on the playoff run, ass. Just terrible, bro. All
right.
I
got faith.
What happened to this guy once the jersey got delivered at my house? It was done from there.
Do you have a date on that? We're going to have to factor
Are you sure, man? People are going to start coming to our house, man. They know where we live, too, man. He does some podcasts at home.
I like him. I think he'll.
I love him. I got the jersey, bro. I was like, you're ready to go.
Man.
I was invested.
What do you think about Bains? You think he's going to...
I think he's got an opportunity because one thing you have to, the offense is there, right? Mm-hmm. Local kid. Now, the issue with any player that's playing in the minors, and he's doing pretty well, right? Yeah. He's done all right, is that can you play that at the NHL level when it's that much faster? You don't have that much time to react, right? You can be a good AHL career player, but can you react to the speed? I think he does some good things. First year, local kid, awesome story, straight up. I love it. Like, I know his family. I know him a little bit as well. Yeah. Awesome dude. But until you hit the NHL, you don't know where you stand on that. Like, it's a different speed. So I'm optimistic and I'm positive about it. But I always with AHL players always kind of say, hey, just give them time because that speed is different when it's the NHL.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, and I feel like in most sports, it's like college football to NFL football, it's a whole different freaking ball game.
Well, even basketball.
Yeah,
right?
basketball. If you go,
Not everybody's a Fred VanVleet that goes from the G League and all of a sudden he's now a starter.
We watched some March Madness last year. We saw some pretty stuff that would not happen in the NBA.
No, man, that's
Fuck no.
So
Well, but I mean, the NBA is lacking too. You have LeBron just dicking around. He doesn't really care. I feel like the NBA.
Do you feel like the
NBA
is gonna die?
I got a no. It's not gonna die, man. man.
We'll die, but I mean, do you feel like
I'm a
it's
Knicks
like,
fan. No, all right.
But from your time back, like
They won.
even 2010, the Lakers, man.
Yeah.
Like that game was different compared to what it is today. Don't you feel?
Yeah. It's more hero ball now, which is like that's the game, right? Like
Yeah.
it's. I don't think it's gonna die though, because the brand value, whether the game we agree is better or worse or whatever.
Yeah.
But the star value has never been this, right? You've got, and brands are going to sell the game more than any actual pure basketball. Like, remember when the Atlanta Hawks had like 8 guys that could play, and they were 5 of them were All-Stars that one year?
Yeah.
Like, that was great basketball.
Yeah.
The San Antonio Spurs was great basketball.
yeah.
What did that do for branding? What did that do for the marketing of the game?
Zero.
Right?
Facts. That's
Yeah,
facts.
that's true.
This is why we have you here
Yeah,
today.
you can't brand all the 5 players.
That's so
Right?
true.
Kyle Korver can brand to a certain point, but
Yeah.
like that's not going to happen.
Guys, a
That's so
3-point
true.
specialist.
Fuck, man. But like that's so true, because even the style of play now, like everybody loves the Curry.
Yeah.
Just the way he is, the game, and like
That
you
guy
know?
is nasty,
Yeah.
though,
Oh, yeah.
man.
Okay, do you guys have teams? Like, do you have
Lakers. We've
Okay.
been
I stopped
Lakers
Sorry
watching.
about that, bro.
Yeah.
I was like a Lakers.
But I mean, I used to
Fucking-
be a LeBron hater when I was a kid. It got really weird for me. Like it got really weird when he joined. I was
Yeah.
very.
They're both
conflicted.
like diehard Kobe
we were
fans.
diehard.
Okay.
It was always Kobe for us.
Nice,
like
nice.
since
Yeah.
we were like kids, pretty much.
But like Kobe's mentality was different. You know,
Yeah.
even when he played, like he was like a leader. You know, like a bad game, he's going back in the locker room like it's fucking.
Yeah, he's basically ripping guys apart.
Yeah, everybody's shit scared in the locker room. But you have
this
a
guy
LeBron
feels
who's like,
that type of stuff is not there anymore. And
no,
he feels
man.
Like the
You have
like,
LeBron running
Jimmy
back,
Butler brings that. Like Jimmy Buckets.
but he's like an OG. You know what I mean?
That's
like
what I'm
old
saying. Like,
school.
I feel like now, like, okay, all the stars, like guys like Kawhi, they're
Yeah.
always resting. LeBron doing like what he
Resting.
thinks.
Yeah.
Kobe was playing
But
fucking. You know
now
what I mean?
I feel like there's different teams that are fun to watch. Like the Grizzlies are fun to watch. The Knicks are fun to watch. There's like different Timberwolves are fun to watch.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's different type of the young players somewhat bring it. Like Devin Booker, he brings it. Damian Lillard and what's his name?
Lillard, I love watching.
Simons. Though they're ranked number. Who would have thought Trailblazers are ranked number 4?
Yeah, you know what the NBA though? It's
Yeah.
like they don't have the cutthroat. They don't have the MJ mold, right?
Yeah.
Kobe's
Yeah.
cut from the MJ mold. Jimmy Butler, I would say, is cut from that
Yeah.
as well. You don't have that because guys are friends now.
Yeah.
Guys are kind of
Business
angling
partners.
to, James Harden kind of is going to pop over to that team. Russell Westbrook's going to go to that
Yeah.
team. Whatever. They're all trying to kind of make friends to a certain extent. But I think the game is all right. Individual talents are right. But that, like, Isaiah versus MJ, or, hey, Larry Bird and MJ were boys off the court, but
Yeah.
they were ripping each other, like,
Yeah.
or Magic Johnson or whoever.
Like even Iverson and Kobe.
Sure, man. Like, that mentality is not necessarily there. I think in terms of, like, the amount of talent you have across the league, right? We're talking about Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
my
Alexander.
God.
Like, the guy's
That
been
guy
on a
is-
heater.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Right? Like,
Yeah.
every
He's
market's
sick.
got 1 or 2 guys.
Yeah.
I don't think the NBA's ever had skill like this. But it's like,
Like even the Greek freak.
yeah.
Like fuck. man.
What the
Yeah,
fuck
man.
is that,
Yeah.
bro? Imagine trying to put up a defensive game plan against that
Yeah.
guy.
Good luck.
Possible.
And now he can shoot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now he can shoot as well. I did want to ask one more question about the Canucks. So, in your opinion on this,
All right.
JT Miller signing, what are your opinion on it?
Okay, at the time of the negotiation, I thought they should move off of him. And now with what's going on, I still think it makes a lot of sense to move off that contract. So my opinion only, right? I'd never, to this point, I don't get that contract. I don't understand because he doesn't play down the middle, right? We've seen him during this season, early season. He's best on the wing. So you've essentially paid a guy to play on the wing when he was supposed to maybe replace Bo Horvat if a Horvat doesn't stay in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So you've signed this guy to a 7-year deal worth 56 schmil, but here's the problem: is he a winger for you or is he a center? You need centers. You can't. So I think at this point in time, I don't know what's going to happen. I think once you're locked in, you've locked into the player, and he's a good player. Like, random dudes don't score 99 points in the NHL. Like, he's a skilled guy. But when you're building a team to win, you got to build it from the center position. And he's not a center, the way I see it. The way JT Miller might be like, yo, you're out to lunch.
Yeah.
But the way I see this team, I don't see him. So that signing to me still confuses me, because if I was to spend $7.5 to $8 million on somebody at this point, I'd probably give it to Bo Horvat instead of JT. So the JT Miller, He's a frustrating player to watch because defensively he's not there
Yeah.
sometimes, and maybe the effort sometimes is not there.
But then it's like he hits you with the other side of it too
But yeah.
sometimes. When
But,
he's
like,
like
he's a
just like
power forward, right?
sniping goals and
But it's like
everything,
it's
both
been
sides,
two extremes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Which-
You don't
which
you don't get
can't-
the gray area so
you
much.
can't
It's
you
black or
can't be
white.
putting up like that much paper for having that much gray area.
Yeah, and-
That's what I agree.
That's
yeah.
facts.
That
And
makes
the part of the
sense,
reason
yeah.
I didn't like that signing or the idea of the signing even before was because he's a power forward, man. He plays a physical game. Those guys don't age well into their 30s.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at a 34, 35-year-old player, there's a lot of hard miles on that body,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it's not an indictment on the player. It's
yeah.
like that's facts, man. Like
Yeah.
look at guys like Blake Wheeler, look at guys like Jamie Benn.
We
They
could
slow
look
down
at
pretty hard, man.
Tom Brady.
Yeah, he's 43 though.
fuck.
But
Or
like
whatever the hell he is.
even then, but like
Tom
41.
Brady, man,
but
he's still
different.
throwing.
He
He's
plays every game in
different, bro.
Germany, man.
Yeah,
Like he
yeah.
might be all right.
Yeah,
Yeah, dude, he's a different.
No,
dude.
he's actually undefeated since the divorce. Shout out my boy.
I think Giselle is undefeated too.
Yeah.
She's already like
Yeah,
man.
No, I thought he was gonna lose in Germany because she's from there.
Brazilian.
Oh, is she?
She's Brazilian.
Oh, who
Oh,
the
this
fuck?
guy knows.
Who the fuck? Dude, somebody told me she's from Germany.
She's got a German
Oh, okay,
background,
okay,
but
okay.
she's from Brazil. Yeah.
Okay, I have a
Somebody
question.
lied.
Do you memorize like every team player in the NHL? Like, do you have it like jersey number player?
Okay, so with my color commentary roles, for a couple of years I could be pretty lazy.
Yeah.
Because I was a host, right? I was
Yeah.
like, I don't need to know these guys' numbers. Now that I'm back in this position, yeah, it's like I have to know it for every game. And sometimes I'll still be like, crap, who's number 27?
Hey, look.
But yeah, like I'm not fully memorized there, but you have to.
So you got to do your like.
Sure, yeah, man. Like the guy I work with, Brendan Batchelor, awesome dude, pro, started doing stuff with the Giants here, and now he's with the Canucks.
Yeah.
And he's got every single one,
Holy shit.
every single one memorized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, then this will be the last question about the Canucks. How are we?
This
What?
guy's
what
like-
I just want to know.
Canucks ain't winning,
what
man.
do you think they should do to move forward, or like what plans do you think? Like, is it trade everyone? Is it sign some free agents? Is it what is it?
Yeah, free agents should be off the board for a while
Well,
because
yeah,
they've
yeah.
spent money, and it's
Yeah.
like you pick up free agents because you want to go for it now.
Yeah.
Like
We're
free
not
agents should
there.
always be like, you're the missing piece. Here you go. Welcome to the team.
Yeah.
What they need to do, in my opinion, is you got a couple of forwards that you have to ask yourself about are they a part of the long term? Brock Besser, Connor Garland,
Yeah.
right? Bo Horvat, as I said, to me, he's a guy that I think should be on this team. But if he doesn't want to sign Vancouver, if you can't figure it out, you got to trade him. He can't walk away. If he leaves for free,
In my opinion, I'm keeping Garland.
I like Connor Garland, but one area that I look at, if I had to pick between the two, I would keep Garland as well. But I think what you need to do is you got too many forwards.
Yeah.
You got to bring in draft picks, and you got to bring in like defense. Those are the two areas. And these guys, they have too many forwards right now. So I'm looking at those two wings. You're not going to get like a crazy amount of prospects for that, but like I think Brock Besser would have a solid staying.
Defense wins championship.
Well,
Hey,
yeah.
man.
Well, even
Yeah.
Demko wouldn't be so shit if he had some help.
Yeah. No, last year what he did was unbelievable. This
yeah.
year he's been bad.
He's fallen off. Yeah.
But last year, I think that gives us an idea of how great he was last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, this guy was saving the team over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as like a commentator, do you see yourself like evolving into maybe like other sports, a channel where like you're talking multi-dimensional, maybe like not just hockey?
Yeah. So for me, like last 5 years I've been in a sports, like just across the board, all sports. So what I love about this job is I'm able to do that to a certain extent. Right now I'm full-time hockey, but over the last 5 years I was able to do that, and I love a lot of sports, man.
Yeah.
Like the World Cup's coming up, I'm ready for that. I'm a big soccer guy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
love
exciting.
I went to an F1 race, kind of new convert to that.
Yeah. How was that?
That was insane. So here's
And you were like on the track and everything, right?
Yeah, so that one's kind of funny because I'm a new convert during COVID.
Yeah.
But the funny part is that I started watching the Netflix show, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think most people
That's how you get into it.
yeah, you find out the story. So I actually told my parents about that show.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, check it out. Like my dad's 70, my mom's in her 60s. Like we're talking about older people, right?
Yeah.
And they started watching, and they loved it. Like they watch every single race. So forget me. Like
Yeah.
I like the sport. So we decided to go to France, and we took the parents with us.
That's
so
sick.
so like So to me, it was kind of cool. Whereas like I enjoy the sport, but it's also opening up the sport to my parents too. Right?
How were your parents in the beginning with you wanting to go into this field?
On that, my parents across the board, they've just been like, yo, you do what you're going to do. They always come with the suggestions. Like, there's a certain point, like, get into trades or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like the subtle hint.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
But like, they've always been super supportive. So even when I, whether it was getting my degree in political science, whether it was working with news, they've always been like, do whatever A, you enjoy, and B, like, just take the stress out of it.
Yeah.
Like, just follow whatever you want to do. So my parents, like my dad came to Canada in 1971, worked in a mill his whole life.
Everyone seems
Like legit, worked his ass off, drove a taxi on the weekends too, man. This guy worked like 5-6 days a week, right? Like hustling the whole way. My mom, she worked in a manufacturing bakery. So like stuff that would go to like Starbucks or Safeway, stuff like behind. So like they understood that they sacrificed, but they were like, all right, you're in a pretty unique circumstance here. You do what you want.
Yeah.
We trust you to figure it out. So they've always, little hints, but like I know where it's coming from. It's like back then, anyways. Now now we're doing all right. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
But back then it'd be like, plumbing's not bad. Like, why don't you try that? You know what I mean? Like,
Electrician.
have you ever considered being an electrician? I was like, no, I'm good, Mom.
Your cousin over there has got a plumbing company, right?
Yeah.
But hey, man, sometimes I think it's also my stubbornness as well, where it's like, if you feel like you can do something, it's. But they never ever pressured me to say.
But you can't have doubt in yourself in this field. You can't.
No, you can't, because you're on the camera, man.
Yeah.
You're on the mic, and no broadcast is 100% perfect.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when I started, you'd kind of like make such a big deal about a screw up here, screw up there. Now it's like you have nerves, but they're good nerves.
Yeah.
Back then you're like you're shit scared nerves, right? Like now,
were you
now
ever,
it's just like it's
you
exciting.
kind of embrace it.
Yeah, you're excited.
Were you ever uncomfortable being on camera or like hearing your voice?
Or like have a big slip up?
Yeah, so I still don't. I don't still enjoy like listening to myself or watching myself.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Like I know a lot of people are just like, what are you talking about, right? But I think that's a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
You could,
I agree.
I forgot who it was, but there's an actor talking about they never watch their own movies.
Wow.
Like same idea, right? Which is like you shoot it and you're like, I'm done with it. I don't want to see how I want to. Like, not that they don't take pride in their work, but it's that they just don't enjoy watching themselves,
do it
right?
for the audience and like
exactly.
That's it.
I'm not that extreme. Like I in order to get better, you have to watch and listen to yourself,
film,
right? Like you, but yeah, I'm not in that spot anymore where it's like, man, I think it's important, especially when you're starting, where you're like going back and being like, all right, got to tweak that, got to improve on this, got to, and listen to people, man. There's a lot of people in the business that are willing to help you out and to say, hey, you did that there, but maybe try this out next time or whatever. Right?
So like being open to like constructive criticism. I think that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think I'm a lot better at that because we were talking about before when I started, Bhupinder mentioned be a sponge, right? Mm-hmm. Part of that is also taking what other people say and absorbing it.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff will be relevant. Some of it won't be.
Yeah.
That's up to you to decide, right? Like, hey, man, this person's coming from this angle, or they're legitimately coming with advice, constructive criticism, right?
Did you ever feel like, did you ever at any point receive any sort of hate or like, other people doubting you and being like, maybe you shouldn't go down this path?
Yeah, I think when you're in the public space, well, that's gonna happen.
It's natural, right?
It's always like, I feel
like in our community too, at some points, like even for us, like in the beginning, you have that random hate just fucking going off on you.
Listen, like we were kind of talking about the keyboard warriors, right?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have that in today's day and age where you do something, you interview somebody, and people are like, "Who's this clown?" Right? Like whatever. That's gonna happen. People got their opinions. It's kind of like what I look at, where we were talking about. I have an opinion on a player or the way they play.
Yeah.
I have an opinion on JT Miller, right? I just specified it.
Yeah.
JT's not gonna like it.
Yeah.
JT may not hear it. He probably won't hear it, right? Like, but the point is, that's my opinion, and people are gonna have an opinion of me.
Yeah.
It's tough, especially when you're getting started in the business, where you're like, man. Some people like me, some people like these 5 people are, but like if you open yourself up in the public space, you're gonna get that sort of feedback, good and bad, right?
Yeah.
It's just, yet again, it's not like constructive criticism. You got to filter that and say, all right, where's this person coming from? Where are they coming?
Yeah.
But like I worked in, man, I have training in like a newsroom. I worked in a newsroom, which is a pretty cutthroat. Like,
Sounds stressful.
it's stressful, but you're also coming with ideas, and people are saying like poking holes in your ideas.
Yeah.
So you got to really fight for every story you're working on or every idea. So I feel like I have good training. Like somebody doesn't like your opinion, oh well,
It is what it is.
come back next time,
Yeah.
right?
So what was the difference of working in the Punjabi kind of newsroom compared to now that you're in the English industry, and like do you notice any difference in like the say people or like how they treat you, anything like that, or like do you prefer either one or any way?
Well, I think for that time in my career because I worked behind the scenes for Punjabi,
okay.
Omni
Yeah.
Punjabi, right? I was a guy that was kind of helping coming up with story ideas and lining up interviews. So I learned the game on that job, like how the media landscape works. It was perfect for me because you're essentially making the calls and setting up interviews. You're meeting people. It's like throwing in the deep end times 10, but you come out of that like knowing a lot of people. So for me, it was perfect because not only did I get to know people in the Punjabi space, and my Punjabi got better because I was speaking it every single day.
Yeah.
Like if I don't have that job behind the scenes with Omni, I'm not on air, 100%. Like in my house, we speak Punjabi, whether it's when my grandma was alive, that was the only way I talked to her.
Yeah.
But so like I had a good base, and in the house we'd speak Punjabi too. But like the amount of Punjabi we spoke at Omni
Yeah.
just upped it because I was speaking a lot. So I don't probably have a career in broadcasting, sports broadcasting,
Yeah.
if I'm not there, like flat out, straight up. So like,
Damn.
shouts to Omni and
Shout
shouts
out
to
Omni
shouts to my boy Dilbert Kung as well. And
Oh, Dilbert Kong rejected us, man. He told us
Did
to
he
send him.
reject you? No.
He's like, send me an email. I was like, we were at a hall party.
I wasn't there.
yeah?
I was hammered out of my mind. This guy's texting me, go up to Dilbert Kong. I was like, all right, fuck it. I go up to him. He's like, send me an email. I was like, all right.
I sent the email.
Did
no response, yeah.
All right, let me see what I can do.
Yeah, that'd be Dilbert Kong's like an OG in the game.
So I used to watch, back in the day it was Channel M,
Yeah.
and then I ended up working next to him, and it was just like, and the entire team was.
That's so
It was cool for me because man, like coming in completely fresh on the media game, it was a great area to learn.
Yeah.
But a lot of the Punjabi community stuff, just knowing stuff that's going on in the community, knowing the historical stuff, I learned a lot of that in the newsroom, man. There'd be like features that they'd be working on, be like, oh shit, I never considered that.
Yeah.
So like, even a part of that, like when I showed somebody out on social media or like an issue,
Yeah.
I think a lot of that came from what they used to work on. So, I take a lot of, news was tough. News ain't a fun industry.
No.
Like it's a lot of negative.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, I was happy to leave news and sports is my passion, but I learned a lot there, man.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like you were saying, like the news is like really negative. Working there, was there ever is there anything you felt that like you wanted to be different
Is there any fake
in that industry? Like,
Yeah. Okay, so resources are not there.
Okay.
They weren't there when I was there, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming
Sure they're not there, yeah.
now. But what I like doing, and I actually ended up working on a documentary actually, and Harleen Sidhu, she was a baller from Surrey in the mid to late 2000s. She started off at Khalsa School, went to Guilford Park, PM. She ended up going to Nebraska and playing Div 1 ball. So
Yeah.
we did a doc on her. It released actually on Omni first, but it's coming out on Sportsnet pretty soon.
That's
so,
sick.
So, but like that was
Congratulations.
No, thank you, man. Thank you. Shouts
She's
to my.
playing there right now.
No, so she's back now. She's actually a coach here in Surrey.
Nice.
She's also a nurse. So like she's somebody that's gone the whole way,
Yeah.
did the whole journey, and now she's giving back to the community.
Harleen Sidhu, I think I've heard of her.
Yeah, no,
I'm
she's
pretty sure I've seen
she
that.
was-
Did
she
she
was-
marry
Manny
Manu?
Dudley.
Okay, yeah.
so she married Manny Dudley, so it's a
Yeah,
basketball
he was a
family.
sick baller too.
Yeah, and Harleen's awesome because in the moment I didn't really know too much about her. I'd heard of her,
Yeah.
but like her hype back then in like a pre-social media age was for real, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be airing on December 9th on Sportsnet. So depending on when you come out with this, hopefully
I love that.
Hopefully we can have it.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. We'll post a clip before.
All right, but before that though, going back to that, like
Yeah.
one area that I would change is I know there's a lot of negative. I know there's a lot of you have to cover the negative news.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I loved doing when I was there was just like given stories like that.
Yeah.
Like there's good coming out of the community.
And the
too.
community, yeah.
There's a lot of like, and I worked there back in like 2010 to 2015.
Yeah.
Fast forward 7 years in news, man. Like the amount, even this idea of having a podcast between two brown guys back in 2010, 2011, 20, like not be a thing.
Yeah.
Having a guy working on Sportsnet doing commentary of hockey was not even a thought in 2010. In English, right?
Yeah.
So like the fact that we as a society, we are doing so many different things, man.
100%.
Business, government, whatever.
Yeah.
So I would change that one thing where it's like,
Yeah.
all right, let's lean into the positivity more because there's a lot of great stories in the community.
Yeah. And because we're constantly showcasing the negative stuff, but I feel like our community is attracted
Yeah, we love
like
it.
the
yeah.
gossip and the bad stuff. It's like, dude, there's so many. Like one of the guys that I constantly watch, Kabaddi superstar Jesse Sahota. He's killing
Jesse's,
it.
yeah.
Mhm.
Right? He's a cop, Delta PD, I
Yeah.
think.
All
right?
positive.
And like he's doing so much, wrestler, so much good for the community. And like you're saying, Harley and Sidhu guys, I think they're giving
Yep.
so much back to the community. But they have programs. I think they run a lot of like ball programs. I think they coach.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, they're giving so much back to our community. I feel like if we showcase a little bit of that more, I mean, there's so much that we can like, a lot of kids growing up, man. They,
Yeah.
We're always just focused on like the negative shit, goli bajgi, you know what I mean?
But the key there is that though, right? But
Right.
the key is like when you talk about, hey man, we all work in our own profession because we want to be good at what we do, and
Yeah.
you want to move up in the world, and you might have whatever your motivation is, whether it's giving back, whether it's for some people it's money, for some people it's just being happy, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, multiple things, right? But what you said there, like if you look at Jesse's an example, Harleen's an example. I'm hoping there's a lot of other people, a lot of people in the business world, whatever, not for profit.
Yeah.
Fact is, when you look at somebody like that, you're like, all right, man, maybe I can tweak the way I do things and maybe give back in some way. If you're a kid out there, you're like, oh shit, there's a guy that's working in media. There's a guy that's playing kabaddi, but he's also doing his job, like whatever. Or even for what I like about our job is on Hockey Night is that people just look at us and say, okay, there's guys in their like 20s and 30s and girls in their 20s and 30s, and they're born in Canada and they speak Punjabi.
Yeah. I think that's big.
No, if that means like, there's more people even consider speaking taking a little bit more interest in like language. Hey man, that's all I need.
I agree.
Because
right?
people are gonna look at that and be
man.
like, "What the fuck is this? What are you speaking?"
Yeah.
No, but I love
When the
that.
NHL posted on their Instagram page,
Yeah.
I know that's 80% like Gore on there.
For sure.
They're
Yeah.
100%.
No, because not even the Gore, people in our own community sometimes they look at like Punjabi as if like such a foreign thing. But like when I see you, and you're on this like show and you embrace Punjabi. Even now when you are you spoke a couple of times in Punjabi. And you know what I mean? A lot of people like think that a person at that level, it's like, oh, he's not gonna speak in Punjabi, he's gotta be perfect, this, that, blah, blah, blah. But it's like you're embracing that.
Yeah, I think sometimes what we have is whether it's Punjabis, apne, Gore, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever. Sometimes we lock ourselves into a person. If they're this, that means they have to be that.
Yeah.
And what I mean is, sometimes what I got, and I've gotten this in the past too, I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen to your podcast might get this too. Like, yeah, man, you don't sound like a brown guy. What's that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, like English, you can speak English, you can speak Punjabi, you can make it whatever you want.
Yeah.
So I want somebody to be like, you can speak English to their best ability, you can speak Punjabi to their best of your ability, and just, it shouldn't be don't allow somebody to put you in a box.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Label.
Like they have an idea of you, you create your own idea of you. Straight up.
That's so true. That's so true. That happens a lot up north, man. Because we're from boonies.
Yeah. Oh no,
Kids out
not
there get a
even
lot
that.
of like.
That type of shit used to happen to me. And I used to work at selling phones, right? Then South Surrey in the mall, and it was a very like old like kind of mall. It was like, the little small one.
Sure,
right? And so it was a bunch of old like white people, right? And they'd come in, and I'd start speaking how I'm speaking right now, and they'd be like, "Oh wow, when did you come to Canada? How long have you been here? Your English is so good." And I'm like, "What the fuck, right?" I was like, "I was born here, right?" Like, but that's
the idea,
what
man.
the thing is, right?
But I don't even care how you speak. The point is, you can speak whatever way you want. Like on our show on Hockey Night, our Punjabi's all over the place.
Yeah.
Like I know my style of Punjabi, the way I grew up.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues might speak a completely different way. Who
Who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be
I don't
taped
care how
every
you
time.
speak, man, Punjabi or English.
Yeah.
The point is, like, there's an idea sometimes, especially, I had somebody when I started doing more English stuff,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, a couple of comments I got was, I didn't even realize you spoke English. And it's just like, that's a you problem. That ain't a me problem, right? Like if you ask a couple of questions, you'll figure it out. I'm born and raised here, right? But that's also people coming in with their ideas of, you know,
not open-minded.
Yeah. So like going back to the original conversation, but when somebody comes away, like I had a person come up to me, he's like, hey man, I know Punjabi, I speak it, but my kids, born and raised here, he essentially said, yeah, unfortunately we weren't able to teach them, but they watch your show and they are interested in it. They're picking up words. They actually are active in learning it and they speak to it like they're us now.
Yeah.
And they're trying to learn. I was like, yo, man, that like the only reason, one of the main reasons, I would say the biggest reason I'm in English broadcasting now is because of the Punjabi language.
Yeah.
Like, thank you to the Punjabi language. Thank you to my grandma who used to live with us that I learned that language. Otherwise, I'm not probably working in sports. I'm probably doing something else, and I don't know if I'm enjoying it. So, you know, anytime I get an opportunity to pay respect to the language, the culture, I do it every single time because without that, man, the profession I'm living today, we can talk about being the first South Asian color commentator in English.
Yeah.
That's cool, but my roots are my roots, and I take pride in that, man.
I love that. Holy fuck. I just got like, you know, a little bit, you know, that's a moment.
But it's crazy how it was a ripple effect in the end of the day. That's the only way that you would have got to where you are.
Yeah, because at that point, especially in 2010, you're like, there's no inroad for me to go in. I might know all the sports in the world, but there's no way for me to prove it.
No door,
Yeah, there's no way for me to prove it, right? And so Punjabi helped me. I kept on doing like writing on the side a little bit in like a magazine, local magazine. But that was just kind of like, that was for me.
Yeah.
That magazine wasn't doing much circulation, really. but
that's crazy.
So, hey, man, like respect to the language, respect to the culture, and respect to a lot of our viewers, man, because to this day, people...
And respect to you for fucking embracing that.
Respect to you.
You know what I mean?
Man.
And like being the first, you know, opera.
And that's actually rock.
And
like,
you're paving the way
for
for another generation of kids that will look up to you and be like, dude, we can do this too now.
That's the hope, man. We hired a couple of new kids on behind the scenes, and you know, one's 19, another guy is 21, and they're in that same line where it's like we started watching hockey when we were younger through your guys' show, and for us, and now they're like in the profession, and the hope is, you know, I've always said this, I'll do whatever I can, and on the TV side and hockey net Punjabi, I love what I do, but at the same time, I want to be in a position where somebody else is coming up up, you know, kind of we want to be a bit of a pipeline, right?
100%.
You went like, hey man, like I don't want, this ain't my job for life, right? Like I want some young guy to come over and be like, tell them, hey man, maybe it's time for me to host. So if we have like a bunch of people that are coming through that are interested and love the language, that's the hope, man.
You got to keep that flame going too, right?
For
you want to make sure that baton keeps getting passed down.
Exactly.
Who's some of your favorite people that you've interviewed yourself?
Ooh man, I've been so lucky to interview over the last 5 years with the radio show.
Some pretty interesting guests.
Yeah, so I've got a bit of a New York kind of, I love going there. It's like, I've probably traveled there more than anywhere else in the world. So Knicks, I picked the Knicks after the Grizzlies left town. I was a free agent for a few years, went to New York, caught a game at MSG. They sucked.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what, this is the team. Even during the 90s, I liked Patrick Ewing. I liked that era. So I was like, all right. Also a Yankees fan. Ugh. And I interviewed A-Rod. Which is crazy. I actually met him last year when he was in Vancouver. That one for me was way up there because it's like people have a lot of opinions on A-Rod, whether it's the steroid issue, Hall of Fame, whatever it is.
Oh yeah.
But I think the psychology around people and like the way they think is really, really cool, right? Like the way that what has made them a great athlete, what makes them a good business person, what makes them all of these things. Yeah. So I think A-Rod is fascinating because, man, this guy, his own doing is not well liked in culture. Yeah. But if you look at him now, this guy owns the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Oh yeah, he's
like,
fucking...
and like he's basically Magic Johnson, who's a billionaire in his own way. Yeah. He's his mentor.
He just has his like unliked persona.
Yeah, but like if you look at, so I just understanding where he came from, and his mom, you know, in Miami, like not even believing in banks because they thought they'd steal the money. She used to keep her money under the mattress. Like coming from humble beginnings and then now being a mogul and owning teams and understanding, using that, you know, that immigrant hustle, which I think all of us can relate, depending on where our
100%.
parents came from, when they came. Like I take that and I'm like, man, that's like my dad busting his ass driving a taxi, my mom working in 8-hour shifts, and it's the same. Like if this dude can do it, sure, he's a absolute freak of an athlete, and that psychology, ups and downs, self-induced or not. I thought that was probably the more interesting one. Like I've been lucky to interview a lot of people, but that one's kind of fresh for me because of it's not about, hey, let's talk about your home runs. It's about you went from here to here, and there was a bunch in between, right?
Story.
Yeah. Do you get like really? Like, do you ever get like nervous, anxious going into these like scenarios?
And like, was it? It was like a sit-down interview with him.
So this one was that one was over the phone,
Okay.
but I like a week later I had a chance to meet him briefly. So that one was cool. But in terms of nerves,
Like, what's a breakdown of like your mindset when you're going into these interviews? Like, what's going through you?
so there's two types of interviews, right? Like when we do them in hockey's like high stress in this city. So it's high stress because every answer is going to turn into a talking point. So, when we interviewed Jim Benning, we knew that's whatever he says is going to be used, and we're going to be talking about this tomorrow because it's Vancouverites take their hockey so seriously. So like that was it wasn't a stress, but it's definitely a like you're thinking about that interview differently. You just say, okay, man, like every answer is going to be the fan base is going to lose it, right? Like where the other interviews, which are more like kind of like this, where you're having a conversation. I don't see there's a stress there. I think the stress comes in from just knowing your shit.
Yeah.
Do your research, right? That's where it's like, okay, there's certain things through this person's history or their career. I got to know my stuff. And if you go in prepared, you got no issues with that at all, right? So I think the stress is just, in those types of interviews, it's the preparation element just takes care of that stress.
Do you ever feel like it's harder to interview some athletes? Because I always find it for us personally, like rappers, it's hard.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I've never interviewed a rapper.
Especially
that's
like
on my
someone in the
list.
music career.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Like,
hard.
It's hard.
Okay.
So I wonder, like, was it the same kind of mentality that you have for, or is it, I mean, do they have it give you more of a hard time? Do they think kind of like this way or that way in any way?
Athletes, depends on what sport. So like hockey players in season are tough, man.
Yeah.
Because hockey players are pretty conservative to begin with, and they just don't want to say anything that will rock the boat. So they'll be like, the cliches come out for hockey. So those interviews are tough because if a guy, you ask him, a question on his off season, and hey, you're trying to kind of soften him up, he might be like, yeah, it was good.
Golfing.
And then where are you going after that? I mean, like he might not even say golfing. He'll just be like, it was good. Move on. Some guys just want to get it done.
Yeah.
I think certain sports, it depends, man. Like I can't even like conclusively say one sport is better than the other.
Yeah.
But I find MMA guys are
Tough.
actually not bad.
Yeah.
If you remember, like prize fighting, they're trying to sell a fight. They're trying to sell a fight, right?
that's
That's
true.
why I like talking to prize fighters because they understand the entertainment side of it.
Yeah.
Where certain basketball players get it, but like they're tough to talk to because
They have to be cool.
they have to be cool, and also access in basketball is like, man, this guy's making $20 million. He's not gonna. They don't regularly agree to interviews like that unless it's like a Matt Barnes podcast or a Steven unless they're buddies, right?
Yeah.
So I think just prize fighters to me are the ones that if you can get those guys on, they understand the game. They understand that there's an entertainment side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, because I mean, at least, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to a certain extent, I guess that's part of the athlete
For sure.
thing too. It's like, what's his name? I mean, same thing for the rappers. Like, look at The Weeknd or something like that. Like, they're inaccessible.
You know what it is though? It's a challenge for the interviewer to find that though.
Yeah.
Like we can criticize the athlete all we want, but like that's where I turn it back to myself. I'm like, all right, what are we gonna hit this guy on that will open him up? Sometimes you try your best and you're like, man, I tried like 7 different things. I went through like all
the
these.
loops.
I went through like I've tried to find out things in his personality or maybe he shared on social media that, and sometimes it hits. I think we were talking about like numerous examples where a new guy comes into Vancouver and we just start talking about where he's been before and the guy's like, hey, that was pretty chill. Like Brock Besser is actually, I know we were talking about Brock earlier, but he's generally in season very rigid. Like he doesn't say much. He's kind of got but you get him outside of season a little bit one of the nicest people around, right? You talk about some other soccer players are good with that too, but I think rather than focusing on the athlete, that's where
That's
on us as a challenge. Like, all right, how do I crack this guy? Like, how do I get him to open up?
Yeah.
And it's worked a lot too, right? You just got to find that.
What's your favorite sport outside of hockey?
Soccer.
Soccer.
I grew up
Football.
Yeah.
Football.
So like the World Cup is
Yeah.
my wheelhouse, but like even growing up, big English Premier League fan.
What's your team?
Arsenal. So top of the league right now. I don't know if you guys are soccer fans. But
I like Liverpool.
Liverpool. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah,
They're
no.
not having a great year, man.
So bad.
Who
You got
for-
the Lakers and Liverpool right now. It's rough times.
I got Eagles.
Okay, there you go.
We're all good.
Yeah.
We're good. We're
Philly.
happy.
Still, yeah.
I don't know how we lost to
It happens.
those
It
guys.
happens.
But honestly, I can say that I told 2 people before the Monday nighter that we were gonna lose.
Okay.
Why? Why do you think that?
Mr. Heineke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So soccer for me, growing up through high school, early university, I still watch it to a certain degree. Maybe not the same level. I love boxing
Yeah.
as well. I love the art behind boxing and just like there's more than just 2 guys just slugging the crap out of each other. It's like no, you got to work your angles. You got to
science.
right like that aspect and. Yeah, that's probably, and more recently F1. I'm watching a lot of F1, man.
Who you got, Garcia or Tank?
I already said Tank.
Yeah.
I think I think for like that money you can put on Garcia though, man. Like he could if he keeps out of the range of the power.
So okay, see, I'm when it comes to a lot of boxing and MMA, I'm looking along those lines now. Where like, yeah, there's the favorite, but is there money to be made there, right? I might lean Garcia on that front too, because I think once sports betting kind of becomes involved, you start thinking about the game slightly differently, right? So
because look, the way I see it is, the only way Tank's winning is like after the 6th round, he's gonna knock him out.
Yeah.
But up until the 6th round, he's losing. Garcia's
gonna
tapping him up
probably
everywhere.
Piece him up, yeah.
And then boom, if he gets past the 12th round,
Yeah, but I just see that guy.
Tank
getting
loses.
Yeah.
exactly.
But then if he like, he's mini Mike, man.
Yeah, so.
yeah, it's interesting, right? Like my growing up and just MMA, I've been slower to come around. Like I know, local guys, obviously Arjun Butler, doing what he's doing in 1FC, good
Gary
for him.
Saline.
And Gary, knowing him going back 2010 basically.
Yeah. Even shout out to guys like Kotar, man.
Gulthar's been grinding for years, man.
Dude.
Good for
Kotar Gill, like I think he was a pioneer of that.
He was absolutely, and he's still doing his thing. And Abby and B-Slug guys are doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
But what I like when I really got into boxing was my favorite fighter to this day is from Philly, Bernard Hopkins. No longer, he's a promoter now with De La Hoya.
Yeah.
But like that was the era of when I was like really into it. I caught a couple of fights.
That's pretty cool.
I caught Hopkins' last fight in LA where he got knocked out the ring, which was I was sitting actually right in front of the guy from Cypress Hill, Be Real, the rapper. So it was just like weird, man. It was a cool, but like hardcore boxing person that would travel. There's actually a guy out east, Sukhdeep Chakadia, who's also
that's our boy.
That's our boy.
Yeah, so I'm gonna hopefully hit up his fight in January and support. He's doing great.
There's one more in UK, Dylan Chima as well.
Yeah.
He's also.
There's quite a bit of boys coming up in boxing.
The Brown boys rocking it in boxing for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a sport where like I feel like a lot of talent coming out. Like even Benit is killing it.
Oh yeah, man.
He just knocked out I think another guy in his professional bout a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, it's cool to see that.
Yeah, and the prize fighting thing, I think where you see guys like locally here, guys like Arjun, guys like Gary doing their thing, man, that's an area like they break through first time around. And then guys, girls for that matter, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're going to see more of them pop up, right? Where like even I think the 1FC example is really interesting because and UFC has this too, don't get me wrong, UFC is the top of the food chain, but we're not even taking into consideration what people are doing out other sides of the world, man. When they see guys like Arjun or Gary fight, right? Like it's the biggest prize fighting organization in Asia. So it's probably dudes in India right now looking at that and saying, wait a second. All right, there's a chance. There's a chance. Give it a go.
Facts. Do you feel like working on a big network restricts you from maybe your, I don't know, political views or like, you can't really say too much on certain things? Like, do you ever feel restricted anyway?
No, I've never actually felt that. Like I express my opinions. One thing that was really important to me was the farmers' protest in India.
Yeah.
And on Hockey Night in Punjabi, like that season opener for us, I had a thing that I put out right at the top of the show. I was pretty active on social media on it as well. So, there are limits, but I've never felt that like whatever I wanted to say was tapped by anybody for that matter, right? Like I feel like we're in a position, and everybody's different. Some people are more, hey, they want to be extremely vocal on their views, but like for us, man, if something, I think farmers' protest for a lot of people here locally was
big,
it was massive, right?
Yeah.
And that's why like I look at that as the example, and that was never an issue for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a rally.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Good for you guys. No.
And I was gonna ask you, what do you think about in Canada, right? We have this conversation a lot just between cousins about how like more Canadians now are making it like out of Toronto and stuff like that. Or maybe we could talk about BC in particular. Do you feel like we have the right tools and enough things going into it for kids to develop here?
At ground level, like at a lower level.
Or enough competition
Compared to
In
like in
terms
America.
of the lower levels of things.
Of like sports or
Sports.
So any
Okay.
sport,
yeah.
like do you think
like basketball, football.
why is America
whatever.
creating better players?
I think there's a couple of things here. Like the amount of corporate dollars that aids in the States is always higher.
Okay.
Always higher. Like you've got corporate dollars that help fund a lot of these things, right? When we talk about basketball, for instance, we were talking about Satnam. I think a lot of people look at Satnam's story and be like, yeah, but like, we talked about it. Was it skill or was it the India factor? One thing we forget is that he also went to like a prep academy in the States before he got drafted, right? So he did have skill. The prep academy took him in.
Yeah.
Now, whether he was good enough or not to stick in the NBA, that we saw that he didn't stick around very long. But that the fact that prep academy was there tells you what we have in Canada and what they have in the States. And the States is they're attracting from all over the world and the best of the best, and then they're pumping money into them, which is in Canada we have those limitations.
Yeah.
But on the local level, man, like if I look at locally here, Whitecaps have had in their residency program, a lot of skilled appane. Newton Athletic Park, drive by it, we see how many appane are playing.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Oh yeah.
there's all the participation.
It's packed.
But I think part of it is the system. Part of it is like, do you want to navigate that system? And do they, it's a worthy question of do they treat it fairly and why aren't appane specifically getting selected from that? The other part is though, I had a few buddies that when I was in high school, they were approached by European clubs.
Okay.
And be like, hey, come out here for a trial and you can play here and prove what your worth is. And their mentality was, why the hell would I do that? I'm not gonna make money there. I'm gonna stay here and make money.
Yeah.
So like sometimes we gotta look at ourselves too, right? Because sometimes you gotta have a trial too, right? So like I think things have changed now.
Yeah.
But back then that was a thing where it was like the option was, yo man, like I'm not gonna make money there, and I'm going out there. It's a bit of a lottery ticket, or I got to prove my worth. I'm better off staying here, right? So part of it was, I think back in the day, we didn't take chances. Maybe we were a little bit more like, is it, not many people have done this before. Is it a risk? Is it worth taking? Now I think you fast forward like 10 years, I think guys are more willing to do that. Like classic example is UV Cooner from Surrey. Playing in Portugal,
just about to say that. Yeah.
Like he's doing his thing. He's staying there. But part of that is the money. Other aspect was, I think back maybe 5-10 years ago, we were not willing to take risks. Now I think more up on air, like, all right, this opportunity's coming up. I'm going to take it.
Do your friends ever think? Do you ever think your friends regret not taking that decision in a way?
Yeah, like so. These were more like kind of distant friends who are the ones that I'm specifically talking about. I don't know. I have never really asked them about that, to be quite honest with you.
But I feel like ball was big back in the day. Like, what's his name? Pasha Bains?
Yeah, Pasha's.
He did Div 1, right?
Yeah, he did. He was huge, man. He was a phenom. Like, and to this day, like he's still Drive Academy is doing
he's killing it.
A lot of stuff too.
So I feel like there are. So it's just basically the money.
I guess that's always been the thing in our culture too, right? And especially back in the day, like it was tough for your parents and that generation of like, I guess kids growing up. It's like that's crazy because it's like, yo, get up, go work. You know what I mean? It's like go make a living type of thing.
I feel like not even that. I just feel like the fact just
leaving home,
just leaving home.
Yeah, that too.
You're
man.
up by yourself.
Yeah.
You yourself probably are thinking like, well, like because it just wasn't the norm. Now it's like, a little bit
It's
more
accepted
normal
too
for
now.
like kids to go to do this school out here, or go to
For
this
sure.
I school over here, or go
Yeah.
to this place over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I went to SFU and like I graduated in 2010, right? So back then, going out of the city or going out of province for school was like the one-off, like one of your friends went or whatever. Now it's like people are just doing it all the time, right?
Yeah.
The whole medical school is going to the Caribbean. That became a thing after that. So back then it seemed like a
Lawyers
big
and-
deal. Now it's
yeah.
not, man.
Yeah.
Now it's. I think people are more open to trying
Oh
new
yeah,
things.
100%
How's your outside life outside of the?
sports.
For about 5 years, I had no social life, to be quite honest with you. Because I work, when we talk about working and trying to get to a point, for 5 years, I had 6-7 days a week, every single, basically hockey season for sure. And then even beyond that, it was like my summers were 5 days a week, right? Like that was my vacation. So, yeah, man, just hustling. And I think in a lot of professions, when you're trying to really carve out who you are and carve out what you're doing, it's that sort of dedication. Like you hear, and I'm not making the comparison, but I think it's important. For me, it was like, in order to do the English side and the Punjabi side, I had to put in like 6-7 days a week, right?
Yeah.
There were certain days where I was doing 2 or 3 jobs in sports, but it was like, hey man, that's what I do, right? That I'm a sports guy, and if I want to hit to a certain point, I'm gonna have to sacrifice certain things, whether it's family time or whether it's every Saturday. Man, since 2014, I've rarely taken a Saturday off. So, buddies' weddings, birthdays, whatever, I'm showing up at 11 o'clock, 11:30, if at all.
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of, some athletes kind of think that way too, where you have to be disciplined and you have to make choices and whatever. And I think in a lot of professions, you have to kind of do that too, where you're kind of grinding and you're saying, okay, where can I?
Sacrifice.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I work or I take a day off and I attend this thing. It's like more often than not.
Yeah. Was everybody around you like understanding of that? Did that ever like take a toll on any of your personal relationships at any point?
Not necessarily. I think there's some moments where you're just like, man, like working quite a bit, right? But that does have, like whether it's family, your parents, girlfriends or whatever, that is a bit of a tension. Just in the sense
Like
that
with girlfriends more, man.
what's that?
With the
Yeah.
girlfriends more, right?
Yeah, I think so. But like you also have to realize what your goal is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the balance, right? So I think to me, there's certain elements of that where you look at it and say, all right, where do you want to go? And yeah, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm single. As a result.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, not as a result, but yeah, I am.
How's that?
I don't mind it, man.
Is that you always? Do you ever? Are you open to? I don't know.
Sound like-
No, what you're trying to say is like,
No,
like maybe let's do it.
No, but my point is though.
This guy works with the Canucks and shit.
No, this is gonna go straight up.
It's
viral. Straight up on
His
Shelby.com.
DMs are gonna get filled
No,
with girls.
But my point though is like, you got to make sacrifices,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And like 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was different. You're grinding. You're like, man, I gotta find out. I gotta work 6-7 days. Now as you go, you're like, all right, I'm chill with it. Like
Yeah.
I've established who I am. I established what I am in
You have
the
more
business.
time.
You have a little bit more. My schedule now is not 6 or 7 days. So
Yeah.
I think obviously I think it's something that you want to hit up.
Yeah.
I'll answer it a little bit less awkwardly than you asked
You
it.
got a little. He's like, oh, how do I say this?
It's like you had full on auntie vibes.
Yeah,
There.
he's like,
I was like,
back That's funny, man. But I know what you mean, though. I feel like, yeah. Do you ever regret that? Like pushing all that to the side for so long and like just being so focused on this?
No, I don't regret that.
Yeah.
Because I think in the end, if you want, man, like everybody's different, but I know what profession I'm in. Going 50% where I'm at, it doesn't work.
Wouldn't work. Yeah.
What doesn't work? Especially my starting point was, remember, walking in knowing jack shit, nothing,
Yeah.
right? And you kind of learn, and you kind of like the extra calories that you put in.
Yeah.
For me, it's something that's worked out,
Yeah.
and it's something that. So I don't regret that at all. I think for me, it's more of like, man, it's required every single kind of extra thing that I had to do, and now I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm very I'm very like happy with it, and you can kind of tweak your schedule and you're comfortable where you're at. But
All right, ladies.
it wasn't always like that.
Slide in the DMs.
I still feel like a part of you though wants to. Does a part of you still want to move up and go forward? And like, what are your goals to keep putting this 100% in, and still doing this grind for?
Do you have like an end goal? Like, I want to be here.
Stagnancy bothers me.
Yeah.
Like I'm one of those guys that like staying at a level. So every couple of years I kind of get the itch where I'm just like, all right, like what else we got? So from the broadcasting side, I'm very happy where I'm at, and it's a new role, and hopefully continues for a long time. But I've done consulting. The Canucks Diwali night, the Canucks South Asian night is something that I helped start 5 years ago.
Nice.
So every single year when that happens, that's something that I'm proud that really nobody in the NHL was doing before that, before the Canucks and we started working on that. So that started dabbling in the apparel business as well. So we just came out with a brand that I started, and a lot of Punjabis resonated. It actually started from a radio segment.
Okay.
Somebody texted into one of my colleagues and like, "Yo, Alex Ald, hey, have you ever tried dud soda?" And right?
That's what you were telling me about.
And Alex was like, "No, what the hell's that?" So next day I showed up to the studio with it, and I was like, we did an on-air taste test. And from there, it just kind of spiraled. People were like, "Man, like apne gode." Everybody were just like they couldn't get an. I was getting random sending me like DMs or tweets and being like, "Hey, we just tried it. It's awesome." And for me, it was just always a way to share the culture. That's big for me, right? Like I love sharing what I do and what we've done as a community, and then vice versa. So one guy's or a bunch of people were just like, "Hey, man, you should start coming out with some stuff." And so just started coming out with hoodies and T-shirts and So like I got I think when I was younger, it was all broadcast all the time. Where like, man, this is it, right? And it is like priority number one for me. It's what I do full time. But what I've realized is as I've gotten more experience in the game, I also am business minded. I also like trying these other things. So when you talk about moving up, or I don't necessarily see that. I like to challenge myself. So when I say stagnancy bothers me, like I want to continue to learn. I want to learn the business space, man. Like that conversation we were talking about A-Rod. That's something that kind of strikes me because I want to continually learn and get better at things.
Like even NBA players, like how they're branded off now.
Yeah,
so it's like using what you have, the main
to
thing.
become like business moguls,
exactly,
right?
Etc.
Yeah,
humble beginnings, but you got to start somewhere, right?
100%.
100%.
I love that. What else? What else is new?
Not much, man. Just covering sports for a living.
Yeah,
consider myself lucky, right? But no, it's good to see that a lot of local kids are.
Yeah, you said that quite a bit too. You've named
that's important to me, man.
I feel like that's pretty cool how you know the space that even
what's
BC
going on,
and he keeps in touch with that.
Yeah, no, I think I look back at like when I was coming up.
Yeah,
and there's a couple of guys that were doing their thing, but could I relate to them, right? Like not necessarily.
Yeah.
Now, I think when we fast forward about 20 years ago, or 20 years from then to now, you're like, all right, hopefully there's people that watch me and some of my colleagues and be like, all right, man, like these guys are grinding, they're hustling, and then you don't have to ask those questions maybe like 20 years ago that I was like, hey, man, like, I'm looking at these hockey cards, but there's like no brown people in here, right? Hopefully Jajad Keda's changing that. Hopefully Arsh is going to change that. But hopefully on the broadcast side of things, we're helping to do that too, man.
How is Jujar doing?
He's doing better this year. So last year he got concussed.
Yeah,
and
I saw that when we were at the gym.
He's a brawler, right?
But remember at the gym we saw he got hit?
Yeah.
That was bad.
Awesome dude. I keep in touch with him every now and then as well. He's in Chicago. But, he had a rough year last year. He's had a couple of head injuries. And once you get to a couple of concussions, especially a hard-hitting game, and you said, like, he's not afraid to hit guys or drop the gloves, you start to wonder and you just say, hey, man, like, just be okay. Don't worry about that aspect. But he's played a lot of games this year. He's played physically. So I think I'm looking forward to when he comes back to Vancouver, connecting with him a little bit more and just seeing how he is. But from a distance, and I think he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, I went to high school with him, man. He's a big boy. Yeah, walking in those hallways.
That's so weird that you went to high school with him.
Yeah. But that's awesome. And so I went to school with Milan Lucic.
Okay.
So
That's pretty sick.
Calgary Flames,
Yeah.
and former Bruin Stanley Cup champion. But like back then, he was not a big dude,
Yeah.
and then he gets to a certain point. And now he's an absolute beast,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I went to elementary school with him, and he's a couple years younger than I am.
Damn.
Yeah, so.
That's so crazy.
Small world though. For hockey, I feel like.
yeah.
Hockey?
Because even
Is it a small world?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, you can like count, Evander Kane grew up around John Oliver in Vancouver. Like when you can start associating high schools with guys, it's a little,
like even Brett Connolly, he's from Prince George.
that's right. Yeah. But
Prince George, all the
Devin
North
Sadaguchi
boys.
was out there too.
yeah.
right?
No, there's even like, guys, Shea Theodores from Langley. You got a bunch of dudes. Devon Taves is from Abbotsford, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of personal connections, man.
Yeah.
Not want to up the Opera count though.
Yeah.
That's the key.
That's the only
That's the
thing
key.
that's like we're kind of like
Who do we got for Upper?
we got.
Is it just a
few.
handful or we got?
I feel like we got a few in the hockey right now, but then I feel like in other, like NFL, I don't think we're anywhere fucking close.
No, I think with that, like, the DC for the Seattle, not DC, sorry, the defensive assistant, Sean Desai, is an Indian guy who used to be the DC for the Chicago Bears. Like,
Yeah.
So that's good.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Odell
yeah,
Beckham Jr.'s
yeah.
agent, Zeke Sandhu,
Yeah.
Punjabi guy.
Oh, that's respect. I didn't
Yes.
know that.
So, like,
that's
his-
pretty cool. That's a different game in itself.
Yeah, he handles a few, but like that's the big one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know Odell's been out here in Vancouver a couple of times.
Yeah, he's
I
working.
think Zeke brought him, so
Oh, that's like a different
yeah,
like.
Yeah.
respect.
Yeah.
Harkey Singh, actually, a guy that is Ontario based. He's an agent for hockey.
Yeah.
So he's Arsh's agent, but he's got a few other guys, and I know him quite well. So he's a good dude that's grinding and kind of. He used to represent guys with a bigger agency. Now he started his own. So there's people that are like on the business side, or soccer is the big one. I think soccer. Once there's a player at a level where you're like, oh crap, like this guy could. Resonate a little bit.
Yeah.
That person will have the world in their hands, man.
yeah.
Like soccer is a different ballgame, man.
Yeah.
I think I know what you mean. I've always thought that too because I feel like every single brown parent
Yeah,
puts their kid in soccer.
Yeah.
So just on a numbers game,
for sure, man.
somebody should be in there.
Yeah.
Right?
But soccer's
yeah.
a tough
It's
game.
tough.
too.
Yeah, it's tough. It's the most
it's a
popular
hard
sport in the
game.
world at the same time as well.
Yeah, and you got to remember, like certain sport or countries, Brazil, Argentina, all of these places, that's religion to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really like
Yeah.
It's how football's in
yeah,
America.
And we're
Yeah.
talking about some people. The story I referenced about like some guys that had a decision, right? Like, where do I stay here and make money or do I go?
Yeah. They have no choice.
Guys in those countries,
No.
Argentina, Brazil, it's like, I have a chance to get out and do something.
Yeah.
Because, man, like, some of these guys are coming from extreme
Yeah.
poverty, right? So, like, sometimes choices, having no choice is enough motivation, right?
But what's his name? What's his name? Davies.
Oh, he's
Yeah, he's from Edmonton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Edmonton.
Yeah. So, I think with a lot of Apane, though, it's it'll happen. Maybe it's India, maybe it's here or whatever, but it's
coming.
it's coming. There's enough kids playing, and
I mean,
hopefully
Team
they're
India is good, man. What is his name? Chatterjee, that one guy.
Who?
Team India for the soccer, man. we played a couple times in the
I don't
FIFA.
recognize that name, brother.
I remember I whooped this kid's ass in
yeah, yeah,
FIFA.
yeah. No, I
Remember?
beat
Was that
you.
a create your own player?
No, it was an actual player. Remember his name?
Oh yeah. I know. I forgot his name,
Who
but
you got winning the World Cup?
Ooh,
I was gonna do my bracket today, but I didn't get time. But yeah.
I'm talking too much, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, did I say yeah? No.
gonna go Argentina.
Argentina?
Yeah, maybe I'm a sucker because I want Messi
Yeah.
to win one, but
I'd rather have Ronaldo win
I'm a
one.
Brazil guy.
I don't think
always.
Ronaldo's good.
He ain't winning shit though.
No.
Coming from Man U and
Yeah,
the mess
yeah,
that he
yeah.
made, I don't know if that's happening.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, what did you
they
think
didn't
about that
believe him.
interview? Did you get a chance to watch a little bit of it?
I watched pieces of it.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it too.
I don't think. Okay, he's coming from a place of self-interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he wants to leave, so
Okay.
he's
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
saying, "I'm blowing this up." But what he's saying, a lot of the stuff that he's saying, like, "Hey, man, like Manchester United." Behind the scenes is not to the same level as Juventus or Real Madrid or where I've played before.
Yeah.
That might be fair.
It
That,
could be true, yeah.
that might be fair. Like,
And like it wasn't even like he's talking about freaking. If you watch the interview, it's
He's talking about-
technology.
he was talking about jacuzzis.
Yeah,
man.
he's talking about the technology. He's not talking about okay, like this is, and they're saying like Man U is just stuck in kind of in their same ways.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was that big of a deal. And he's just doing like the same thing all these NBA players do when they
Sure.
want to get traded. Freak out.
But with him though, it's
Yeah.
like he wants to get cut by the team and just says like,
Yeah.
"Let me go."
Yeah.
So he knows what he's doing, right? He knows what he's doing. But
It's like Kanye West, low key.
Yeah, not as not as extreme.
Yeah,
Not
just
as
not,
extreme.
yeah, just not as
Low-key was the key part.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you that. Like, do you ever like get into that sort of politics other than like, let's just say, taking a step back from sports? Like, do you ever like tune in with like what's going on in like that world?
I pay attention to a lot, like everything, like
Yeah.
whether it's pop culture, whether it's whatever,
Yeah.
right? Kyrie Irving, whatever it might be going on. But
What's your take on all that?
you know what? With that, I feel like, just to answer the previous question, where it's like, I pay attention, but also at the same time, there's a limit to how much every single person can kind of take on and be like, have a take on.
Yeah.
Where, like, hey man, anti-Semitism is wrong,
Yeah.
flat out, like
Yeah,
straight up.
yeah.
That's my take on it. It's
Yeah.
like, don't go in that direction, right? That's the same as any other culture.
Yeah.
We have it. If you've had hate directed at you as brown people,
Oh yeah.
guess what? It sucks.
Yeah.
And you don't want it. And
Yeah.
I'd say the exact same regardless of what culture it is, man. So that's my take on it. But in terms of like, do I pay attention? Yes. Do I engage? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Because there's a limit to what you can engage on. There's a limit to what you can really kind of lean in on, right?
Yeah.
Like some things are just kind of like in one ear,
Out
out
the
the other,
other,
right?
yeah.
Where it's just like, but yeah, in terms of like, yeah, like the Kyrie and Kanye stuff, absolutely I have a take, man. Like you can't, I think we're at a point in society now where we can't generalize on any community.
Yeah.
Man, like it's individual, right?
Yeah.
That's when our dealing should
You
be.
gotta start
man.
looking at it
A
like,
broad
yeah.
brush is
Yeah.
like it's just we can't do that. That's wrong.
Do you think he'll play basketball again?
I think he's been cleared to play basketball. Yeah.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he'll be playing pretty soon.
Oh really?
Yeah, as of today.
Oh, I didn't read that.
I
thought
I read something last week that he might.
he's-
It wasn't that he's not going to play again. A GM rumored or something like that. I read the headline. GM believes that he may never play again in the NBA. Like a week ago.
I think as of today,
Yeah.
the suspension is done, so they can whenever they want to bring him back, they can.
I feel like you don't see that sort of thing in hockey though.
Because
Right?
they're quiet. Because they actually have, I feel like, their real opinions, which I don't personally think that are bad opinions. It's how they feel. It's how they're raised. It's
Yeah.
how it is. But they know, they're smart enough to know in this
Not to say
generation,
it,
in this
yeah.
society today, that not all of their opinions are appreciated by the masses.
Yeah,
in a way.
Hockey. Okay, there's a collective versus an individual,
Yeah.
and hockey's very the group. Basketball, we generally say, hey man, like players understand their brand, which is true, but there's also they're speaking for themselves, right? Like
Yeah.
KD came out with an interview saying, hey, yeah, we're struggling, but look who's playing with me. No wonder we're struggling.
Oh,
Where
shit.
like he's like I'm playing with like Royce O'Neal and all these other guys.
Yeah.
Like
pretty bad.
well, like, but the point is, and if somebody in hockey said that, like, hey, yeah, I'm putting out my numbers, but look at these guys.
Yeah.
He'd get ripped to shreds.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, so it's a different culture. Whereas
yeah.
hockey players, I think you don't see that there because it's still a we think rather than me think.
Yeah. But like you were saying, like,
But I feel like that's better.
With
I
the
think
me
it
think or
makes.
the we?
I think it actually makes the actual game better.
better. Yeah.
That they play as team and it's a team sport because I would rather watch a team play as a team, put their chemistry, like even say football when Mahomes is going to Kelsey, or saying when Horvath's passing it to JT Miller, etc., and they have the actual connection. Meanwhile, fucking Kevin Durant is saying Royce O'Neal, and they're got to go on the floor every other 2 days together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like I think one thing we have to be clear with is like behind the scenes, even in hockey, there's stuff happening.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
They just don't make it public, right? So
difference.
like, and good teams, like even go back to the 90s Bulls,
Yeah.
they didn't like each other. Last Dance shows us that there's like, Dennis Rodman was out in Vegas partying or whatever. Like there was always issues. Yeah. The point is, even back then, the basketball kept it was kind of like hockey. They just kept it kind of behind the scenes. So stuff happens. It's just a matter of when you go public with it, that's when the ego becomes involved. When it's like, you're not only are you acknowledging that there's something that's bubbling underneath or behind the scenes, but when you go public with it, the players take extra offense to it, or if the individual you call out, because like hockey doesn't do that necessarily, and I think for that reason, like you keep the mess internal if there is a mess that's going on. Whereas basketball, it's great for that reason. Where like if I cover basketball, it's like, man, there's storylines 365 days a year because these guys don't shut up, right?
Yeah, they don't.
And I don't criticize them for that, but some opinions are. You got to realize it's a give and a take.
Yeah.
Where some opinions people laugh at and be like, oh yeah, like that's a take, that's a hot take, and there's other opinions that are flat out sometimes
Yeah.
like they're wrong, man. Like,
Yeah.
or at the very least, if you share something, you have the right to be called out and criticized. It's not like, hey, this is my opinion. I came out with it and I can't be touched.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we live in a society where if you come out with something,
Yeah.
you will be, people will find it right or wrong, and that's a part of the discussion you engage in, right?
100%. Like, I feel like even like you're saying, like, I feel like in today's society, you also got to be very careful with what you say. Like, what's his name? The one commentator, Don Cherry.
Yeah.
Didn't he get fired
Yeah.
Yep.
because of something he said a while back? or
Where the
something?
poppy.
Yeah. So that one,
That was weird.
that one's interesting because
Yeah.
I obviously work for the same company, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like that one was another example where all I'll say is this: is like the world's changing, man.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be aware of what is acceptable now versus what was acceptable back then and back whenever. So to me, in that opinion, like, yeah, I thought that was. I can't really speak to the specifics on what happened and all that, but that to me is like one of those things I look at and say, yeah, man, the world is changing and opinions matter. Like what
Yeah.
you say, what I say as an individual on
Yeah.
air, what I say anywhere, like it has an impact on people. Like
100%,
it's my
yeah.
opinion, but
Yeah.
at the same time, yet again, I have to look back and be like, if I have the public forum, that doesn't mean I have like just reckless abandon and I can say whatever I want.
Yeah.
Your words matter. They hit people. They affect people. So therefore, you will be judged.
Yeah.
Based on what you
based
say.
on what you say.
But was that something he said recently or like back?
No, that was way back then. That was
So like,
no. Sorry, it was.
No, he
at the
said
time,
it
the time.
at the
Oh, he said it
time.
at the
Yeah, so it
time.
was
Yeah,
about,
he
I
said
think it was
it.
3 or 4 years
Yeah,
ago
he
or
said
whatever
it.
it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
He
He said it. Yeah.
But
okay,
yeah.
but then someone pulled out a video from before too of him saying some.
Yeah, I mean,
racist
when one
remarks,
thing
yeah.
goes, it all falls down.
But I feel like he's just from that generation of like.
Yeah. But you
know
can
what I mean?
understand. But bro, that's another different thing too. When
Yeah.
me, you, and Don Cherry are sitting in, I'll say Don Cherry. Let's say somebody, for
Yeah.
example, right? Are sitting in a room together. We can understand each other more. Meanwhile, when you're coming across a camera or a microphone,
Yeah.
anything can be
Multiple
taken for
views,
whatever
yeah.
it is, and we could look at him in that sense and probably not think anything of it. But
Yeah.
if we could, it's just basically it goes both ways.
Seeing that sort of
Yeah.
thing, do you ever feel the pressure?
I think there's pressure. There should always be pressure if you're in the public space
Yeah.
in order to communicate effectively.
Yeah.
Like you have a responsibility
Yeah,
when you're on
that's what I
television, on radio, that you're saying, I have this job
Mm-hmm.
because I need to convey what I'm thinking or what I'm seeing in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the pressure is there, and if it's not there, I don't know if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Like there should be pressure, is my
Yeah.
point, right? So I think anytime there's a sensitive subject, like I will talk about not even stuff that's like controversial, but it's like, I'll give you an example, right? Somebody in the hockey world passes away, or somebody that most recently on our somebody that on our or a lot of our show members knew. There's a pressure to be like, I want to communicate this in English and Punjabi, whatever it is, in an appropriate way. That's pressure,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that. There's a responsibility that comes with that. But
Yeah.
even other situations, I remember when I was doing the farmers' protest open, like that was pressure on me to like, I need to convey what I feel properly, so
Yeah.
I do this justice.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I think the pressure, regardless of the topic, is always there because you want to do it in a proper way, man.
Yeah.
How have you seen the sports world change since betting's come in? As big, I mean, obviously it's
Yeah.
always been there, but
It's
to
big now.
the degree that it's at now.
Yeah, I think personally, like you're paying attention to more sports. Like I always love watching sports, but like how fantasy changed the NFL. Sports betting has done that for every sport, where like you might have a mild interest in something or a passing interest, and you're like, all right, man, what's that?
Baseball's
what's that
interesting.
anytime goal bet looking like in this
Yeah.
Finnish soccer league, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like I think it's opened it up where that casual fan is interested. I think from a broadcasting perspective, you see it. You see the advertisements all
All
over
the
the place.
time, yeah.
It's opened it up. For us, it's like I've always kind of.
Sportsnet got to work on their bets that they put on there, bro. Let me just tell you that.
All right, I'll take it up with you.
Hire this guy.
All right,
He's
all
setting
right.
up
Well, that's
his
right.
left
Yeah,
hand
you're doing.
center.
But like for me, like because I was in a hardcore,
Yeah.
Sports better early on. But like as I've kind of got into it, I'll throw in. I'm still pretty casual with it, but I'll throw the anytime goal bets or the overs and the totals and all that. But Yeah, it's changed the game, man.
Yeah.
I think if you look south of the border, it's even more like it's a free for all. But like
Yeah.
north of the border, it's getting there. But it's changed the way a lot of people look at the game because now you're not looking at entirely like, hey, Bo Horvat has 14 goals this year or whatever that number is. Connor McDavid has so and so. You're looking at plus 220 odds, man. That's not bad for an
Yeah.
like that's part of your brain is thinking that way too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's hilarious.
Is the game ever rigged?
no.
No.
Do you feel like this is the other thing, not rigged, but do you feel like refs or teams or the NHL put certain teams in a position to win?
I don't think that's the case now. I think there's I know
Or let's just say sports in general, not the NHL.
Like the UFC, I feel does that.
yeah, okay, UFC like
Little sus.
like I said, I what's
I
that?
agree.
Little
I
sus. Little s-
Yeah, like okay, boxing and UFC for that matter. Like boxing, I love this actual sport, but like the commissions, the judging, yeah, that is questionable at best. And I feel like UFC has that elements too, right? Where it's behind the scenes, you're kind of questioning some of the decisions sometimes or the matchups or whatever, right? But like the big four leagues, all of that, man, like hockey's too random to rig anything.
Yeah.
Like hockey is just
Yeah, I don't
a lot of like hockey is based on a randomization, a bounce here, a bounce there, or whatever.
That's why it's like impossible to bet on hockey itself. You don't know what the fuck's gonna happen.
But even beyond that, like
Just
a
keep
lot of
betting
leagues,
against the Canucks.
guys, even
free
even
money.
leagues that have like hard caps or whatever.
Yeah.
Like teams are in a position to make like they're held accountable. You spend money. It's not like back in the old days where you spend a bunch of money and you can just get rid of a contract. There's no salary cap. No, this stuff matters, man. You spend $15 million on a guy, it better work out because for the next 2-3 years at the very least, you're screwed if it doesn't work out, right? Like that's so yeah, man. Like I'm sure like as a boxing fan, I'll look at that sport and be like, what the hell's going on here? How was that like a split decision or how was that a unanimous?
Look at that one fight in UFC you watched recently.
O'Malley versus
Yeah.
Yan.
That was rigged.
Okay. Hey, I don't know, man.
I'll
I'll leave that one to you guys. But
It's different because I feel like that fight was like, it depends on how you look at it as a judge because that guy on one side was just like he was punching. It was.
I mean, if Khabib says the cards are rigged,
yeah,
I think Khabib understands fighting to another like.
yeah.
Like he's a genius when it comes to fighting. Period.
But anytime you're judging a sport, essentially you're judging your subjective.
Yeah.
Like, and this is where I have like issues with some Olympic sports too, right? Where you're not. If it's not a knockout, then it's just down to the judge from Nevada or the judge from Maryland or whatever it is, or the Russian judge or the Canadian judge. But yeah, man, you open that door and then anything can happen, right? Yeah. We've seen in previous times where, there's a lot of questionable decision making, right? Yeah. So I don't know, man. Like MMA to me, I watch it, but I got a lot of. We mentioned some of the local guys that here are doing a lot of work and they doing a great job. But like I appreciate interviewing MMA fighters because I love their personalities. But in terms of the nitty gritty sport, I still have challenge. Like that's the one sport I'm just like, I appreciate the athleticism. I appreciate the tact. Yeah. But like, I'm not a hardcore there because there's something that just like, it's a little professional wrestling to me.
Okay,
when it comes to the UFC.
I got one question for you. Do you feel like steroids should be allowed to a certain extent?
No. I think records that were maybe like baseball, for instance. The Barry Bonds, the Roger Clemens, all of that. Allegedly stuff. Yeah. Baseball to me was a kind of a co-actor in that. They didn't crack down in the moment. They kind of turned the blind eye when like Sammy Sosa was going off against McGuire and Barry Bonds and all that. Yeah. So when it comes to records, and now public opinion shifting the other way, I still look at those records and say, hey, man, like, kind of society allowed it to happen. So why are we now looking back and these guys and say, you wagging a finger when, as a society, we were all like, hit the home runs, right?
Yeah, we want to see
But
that.
I have an appreciation for still doing it clean. For me, my personal opinion is I'd rather prefer that, right? Like I still see that as the essence of sports where hey man, you're just hitting the gym, you're doing whatever you can and you're making it happen naturally. But like when we go back and start rewriting history because Bud Selig, who was the MLB commissioner at the time, saw the business side of it and kind of
Let it happen.
let it kind of, hey,
Slide, yeah.
we don't care. And then 3 or 4 years later, all of a sudden you care.
Baseball, they
Right.
let a few things happen for sure. I feel like that's like the same thing. Like, if they, well, I mean, not the same thing as steroids, but like, say, okay, you know, the pitchers, they use the sticky stuff. Everybody knows
Sure.
they
Yeah.
we have all of his fans understanding it helps them control the ball
Yeah.
better, etc. Right? It's not a big deal. But in 5 years later, 10 years later, if we all go back and we're like, oh, they're cheating now,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be the same thing. You know what I mean?
No, and
Yeah.
like I think a part of it is like in the moment, if you're saying, hey, you can't do this.
Yeah.
But like if we go back, man, we were all like, I watched the Barry Bonds home runs. I heard, you know, the Mark McGwire stuff and the Sammy Sosa. Like, yes. But if you listen to baseball players, they're like, man, everybody knew.
Yeah.
You know, a guy goes from hitting like, you know, Barry Bonds physically just changed. Like you look at him and playing in Pittsburgh versus San Francisco. He was a different human
Yeah.
being when
Oh,
he
yeah.
ended up like, you know, there's certain physical attributes that people knew in the game.
Yeah.
Even though he
But it's
hasn't
like
proven, right?
it's like still happening today though. Like, what's his
Yep.
name? Tatis Jr. He's
Sure,
suspended
sure.
for this one guy, and he was a superstar, and he was injured for a while, and then he got tested,
But-
and it's like still goes to this day anyway.
But the line is always shifting, and I think the like international athletics is a good example, right?
Yeah.
Where the cheaters or the people that use the performance enhancing drugs are always ahead of the people that are regulating.
Yeah.
So that's why we've seen like some Olympic athletes 2 years after the fact, you know, getting their gold medals taken away or whatever.
Yeah.
So like you're always going to have it in the game.
Yeah.
You will,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
We can say, hey, man, like it's not good. PEDs is not good. You'll always have it in some degree. Somebody trying to cheat the system. Somebody trying to get the competitive advantage. So for anybody that's saying, hey, it's already there, why don't you welcome it? Why don't you do it in a safe way? I still don't like. To me, that's greasy. To me,
Yeah.
that's like I wouldn't want it in the sports that I cover. In you know, I still think there has to be a line.
Yeah.
People might be cheating, but it's on the people that regulate them to figure out who's cheating,
Who's
right?
cheating? Yeah. Because it creates sort of a boundary too.
Yeah.
What's an advice you'd give to a kid starting out that wants to make it as a broadcaster?
Yeah, I think sometimes what we do is the biggest piece of advice from me, and you know, through my experiences, two things, right? Not everything you do is going to be a home run. You got to play a long game here. Sometimes we step up and we're like, all right, man, I'm going to belt this sucker. Like first hit, it's going to be it. No, man, there's going to be singles. There's going to be doubles. You might have to be sent back to first base.
Yeah.
Like that's life. So embrace the element of, all right, I'm going to work towards it, right? That helped for me where I'm lucky in what I do, and I'm super fortunate of having met the right people at the right time, had a lot of great mentors, but I also acknowledge that I was patient in the way that I did it too. Yeah. I acknowledge that, hey man, there's a lot of stuff I don't know, and I gotta map this thing out a little bit. I gotta learn as I go. So the first piece of advice is that, you know, kind of understand that there's sometimes you're not going to get it right away. Play the patient game. You know, believe in yourself in that regard. And the other thing I would say is absorb, man. Absorb all that you can, especially when you're a certain age, whether it's, you know, later high school, early college. Take that information in. And that was, you know, I mentioned Bhupinder a couple of times in this pod for a reason, because he was to this day is a big part of, you know, who I am and the way I think about the thought process of like who I am as a professional. But one of the things he said was, I remember my first days at Omni was absorb, be a sponge. Just take it all in. It's not all going to be useful. That's on you to figure out what's useful for you. Yeah. But just take that in. Sometimes what we try to do is we show up to a scene and we're like, hey, man, I know it all. Yeah. You don't know anything. Right? Like, acknowledge that you don't know it. And even if you do know something, like to this day, I'm not walking into a room being like, hey, man, I know everything. No, I'm learning stuff from you guys right now, man. Like, I'm learning a lot of things. So to me, Bhupinder, like when he mentioned that, like be a sponge, I think that's a lifelong process where you're just like, if you want to evolve, continue to evolve, you have to continue to learn. You have to continue to absorb, right?
I love that.
Great way.
Anything you want to plug or?
Yeah, a couple of things, man.
Yeah.
So check out Sportsnet 650, of course. You know, listen to the game calls. Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, and then if you're interested in what I'm doing on the apparel side, dudsorda.ca, and give us a shout on Instagram and just social media in general as well at Randip Janda. So hit me up.
That's Randip Janda. Everybody go support Dod Sorda. You know what I mean? We all drank it growing up. I know we did. Everybody did.
We all did. Still
yeah,
do sometimes.
100%. Sometimes you put Coke with Dod too.
Yeah, man. It's got to be my next line. Clearly,
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of feedback on the. I was more of a Dud Sorda guy.
Yeah.
But
It's always
Yeah, but go check it out, everyone. You know, he's doing big things for our community. You know, paving a new route for everybody that wants to go in this sort of career. It's possible. You know, Randip Janda, thank you for coming on.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Appreciate it.
And we're the Bains and Beers.
And we're out.
Cheers, boys.